stream just talking about JD Vance and the recent RFK dropout. So, yeah, what are your thoughts? So which one do you want to get to first?
Um, let's discuss RFK first.
Cool, yeah.
Oh, to throw my
Because that should really be it should be much bigger news than it's being treated right now.
Absolutely. Let me
Um,
tell you how hard it is to pause a video and get a flattering still shot of someone's face when they're giving a speech. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, it kind of blows my mind that this isn't the biggest news. The biggest news in the news cycle right now. It should be um much larger. It should be much more widely reported on. The fact that CNN only played part of his speech and then they cut away from his speech as soon as he started to discuss the media and DNC collusion. They actually cut off from his speech right in the middle of it and went to a pundit. And we've basically heard almost nothing else about it, reporting wise, since it happened. So it's baffling because it should be the biggest news in the country right now. Just like the assassination attempt should have been much bigger news and should still
Absolutely.
continue to be
Yeah.
much bigger news. It's kind of mind blowing right now. Um, just to what extent the I don't know, whatever term you want to use for them, mainstream media, legacy media, all the major news networks, how they've really become um, a branch of government at this point. I don't really see any other way to look at it than they're another branch of government. And I think that's kind of what RFK was saying in his speech. It was a really, I mean, I listened to most of his speech, um, and the beginning was just it was amazing. I think it kind of trailed off a little bit
It
at the
was
end.
amazing. I listened to the whole thing, yeah. And then I
Yeah,
listened to the Trump rally where he had RFK on stage.
yeah, yeah. It was really something else, and you could hear the crowd absolutely just
Yeah.
just erupt when he brought out RFK.
I think part of the reason it's not being talked about more is how hard the Democrats are coping because I'm in a Discord server with a bunch of far lefties that support Kamala, and they're just it's similar to TDS. They're just finding any reason they can to discredit the guy. Which actually, funny story. About a month ago, they were trying to convince me, "Oh, you're anti-establishment. Wouldn't you be better off supporting RFK than Trump?" Haha, nice try. But now, after he drops out, oh, his voice is weird. Oh, he has the brain worm eating his brain or whatever. Oh, this won't matter because no one took him seriously to begin with. And
I mean,
that
those
they're
are.
convincing themselves that Kamala has better odds and this won't be a big thing at all.
I mean, funny enough, all those things are true. He does have a weird voice, and he does have a brain worm. Um,
The things
and
he
he was
says
and he
are
was he was
intelligent, and I
never
got
gonna.
used to his voice after like 2 minutes of listening to him speak.
I find it super grating. I
Oh
can't get
man.
past it. I can't get past it. It's too distracting for me. And I mean, on a personal level, I don't think that. Let's say hypothetically that I don't know. Let's say RFK was. Let's say the candidate in some weird, alternate universe was RFK versus Kamala, and for some reason Trump wasn't in the. I don't think I could vote for RFK because uh, the truth is a lot of his policies aren't that good. A lot of his policies aren't that good. I'm happy to have him on board. I'm happy to have him as an ally, but he's definitely not a good he's not a good avatar for most conservatism.
I
I
think
mean,
he
he and
is.
he, I don't think
Oh
he
yeah.
would. I don't think he would pretend to be. He wouldn't say that he is. I think that's just kind of what makes
Yeah.
the Trump camp such an interesting shape shifting morphing beast. Is that you can have you can have support from support that ranges from what they would call the far right. Obviously, that term like doesn't mean anything, but you have like the Freedom Caucus, like former Tea Party, libertarians, America First, and then you've got people like Elon Musk, who just a couple years ago was a self-described socialist. I think he was like a Bernie Sanders fan, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure.
didn't
I'm
hear
pretty
about
sure he
that.
was. He was a
Okay.
self-described socialist. He was a huge Trump critic. He didn't like him at all.
Huh.
JD Vance was a huge Trump critic.
I did hear about
Um,
that.
yeah. So he makes this pavilion bigger and bigger, and it invites more diversity and more different schools of thought into it. Tulsi Gabbard just endorsed him, so that's
Yeah.
great. That's cool. I'm wondering, who else maybe could come along. I think it was super interesting. You mentioned Fetterman. I could see it. I could see it happening. I don't think it will, but I could see it.
Definitely not this year,
Um,
I don't think.
yeah. Um,
You talked about the
but
expanding pavilion. I think he's keeping all the former Democrats that he had from 2016, and it just keeps snowballing and getting bigger and bigger each year. And I've I actually did an experiment. I did like sort of a did a political memoir of my own journey, how I got into politics, the things I care about, how I've evolved, and I came to the conclusion that I'm pretty much a single issue voter on the issue of the voters having their own autonomy. Like, the thing that really motivated me in 2016 was feeling like Clinton was just the choice. It didn't matter what the people wanted. You either vote for this or you're a nasty, horrible person. And just over and over again, her getting the debate questions in advance, the 2020 election, of course, and now they're trying to jail Trump, the assassination attempt, just thing after thing after thing of them trying to remove choice from the voters, them thinking that they know best, and anyone else, if the voters pick anyone else, then they're not to be trusted. So I'm pretty much a single issue voter at this point on that issue, on the issue of the voters being able to decide who they want to vote for.
well, I think that the rank and file Democrat voter, uh, I think that they're honestly dumb enough to think that democracy will be irreparably lost if Donald Trump wins. They believe this myth that he is this Hitlerian villain. Um, but I think that the leadership are truly cynical people who in many cases believe nothing. They believe nothing. They're like the sophists of old. What is truth? What is knowledge? They don't believe in anything. Um, and I think that they just know that it's an effective talking point to just repeat over and over that democracy will be irreparably lost, irreparably destroyed if Donald Trump wins. Therefore, anything goes, anything is game, any tactic, um, whatever you want to do to make it happen. So I mean that's what we're up against. We're up against people who are playing a completely different rule set.
The reason they think that is because they've never looked into it. I'm pulling up on the screen now a TED Talk by, her name is Cassie J. It's called Meeting the Enemy. It's the one where the feminist chick tried to interview all the men's rights activists to make them look bad. This must have been 6 years ago, so this was like 2018, 2016, around that time. And through talking to all of them over the course of, like months, maybe a year, she actually came around to seeing their point of view. And once someone opens up their mind and is willing to listen to the other side, you can't undo that. So the Democrats are, like, once they lose that voter, each time an individual voter decides to actually look into one of these issues, they can't unlose that voter.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not familiar with this, so I'm actually pretty interested to hear more about it. Because there's so few there's so few instances of someone who comes around who is staunchly
I'll
militantly on
keep
the
the
other
tab
side.
open. I'll send you this link after the
Yeah,
stream.
please do,
Yeah.
because I do want to. That actually sounds pretty interesting.
Back something I wanted to say about RFK's voice. I thought it was funny when my far left friends used that as a reason why no one takes him seriously after they voted for John Fetterman 2022 and then Joe Biden. Like it, for those who don't know, Fetterman running for Pennsylvania senator had a debate for that election right after he had a stroke where he was absolutely incomprehensible, but somehow he still won that election. And it was because people like the people I'm talking about still voted for him despite that. And of course, Biden, we've all seen, he's incomprehensible, but he
Yeah,
still got votes.
there was a couple things at play with the Pennsylvania senatorial election where Fetterman won. I mean, for starters, everybody hated Dr. Oz.
Yeah, Oz was a poor choice of candidate.
Nobody was enthusiastic about Oz at
Yeah.
all. Um, Fetterman, despite his he had that terrible debate performance um, against Oz, and he looked and sounded ridiculous. Um, but other than that, like his campaign's meme game was really good. You remember, like he had like really good memes, and Dr. Oz had really bad memes. I'm trying to remember.
I
I'm trying to
didn't see
remember
that as
specific.
much.
Yeah, no, Fetterman had like these. He just had these ads, these campaign ads that were just really they were really like internet culture heavy, and they spoke to Gen Z.
Not
I'm
surprised
trying
though.
to
Fetterman does.
yeah
Fetterman is better at that.
yeah
He's better at
and
appearing personable.
whenever you're in a situation like he is, where you had the clear disability, you almost run the risk of attacking the person, generating sympathy votes for them. I think that was a factor too. I think that a lot of people will look at the guy who is disabled and just say, I mean, it's like the disabled guy who wins like class president, because they get like sympathy votes, which is definitely a thing. Um, and then of course Pennsylvania's always got the typical voting shenanigans too. So I mean, all
Yeah.
those things bundled together is how you end up with someone like John Fetterman beating a pretty well-known television personality like Dr. Oz.
That's going to be better this year. Actually, in the 11th hour, there's a pretty promising project. I can tell you over DM, but I probably shouldn't talk about it on a live stream quite yet. But
Okay.
there's
Yeah.
suffice it to say, we're going to cut out their potential to honk with the votes by a reasonable amount.
It's good, man. It's good. I mean, that's probably my greatest fear. My greatest fear right now is that in the middle of the night, election night, all the same shenanigans from 2020. We see voting stop in certain areas and start in others. Broken water mains, cardboard over the windows, poll watchers being dismissed. Just all the same shenanigans over again. I'm terrified that we're gonna see it and it's gonna flip it, and we're gonna find ourselves in a 2021 scenario again, where half the country, arguably maybe more than half the country, feels that the election was stolen from them, feels that their government is illegitimate, and feels powerless to do anything about it. So I really hope that the Trump campaign and that the RNC have kind of both learned their lesson.
At this point, I'm pretty confident in saying that Trump is probably going to win Pennsylvania. I think the real battlefield, though, is going to be the Senate and the House elections. I'm not sure if I talked about this on stream or even told you about it yet, but I was a little sneaky a couple weeks ago. I actually went to a Democrat door knocking training just to get the feel for how they're doing, what that atmosphere is like. And one of the things that was talked about there, among other things, was they have voters who are not sold on Kamala, but they are still willing to vote Democrat for all the down ballot stuff. I think McCormick, that's the Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, I think his race is what we should be focusing on.
See, it's interesting that you say that. They have a lot of voters that aren't sold on Kamala, but aren't. I mean, it seems to me that they're more enthused about her than they were about Joe Biden. I think if Joe Biden was still at the top of the ticket, you would realistically be looking at super low voter turnout for Democrats. Um, the fact that he's been deposed and now she's on the ballot seems to me to have generated a lot more enthusiasm, and most Democrats don't actually know anything about her. They don't know what she believes. They don't know her history. They don't know, for example, that she said she would cancel private health care. She said she would cancel private health care and go to Medicare for all. They don't know that, they don't know that she said that she would end fracking. They don't know that she said that she was the last person in the room on the decision of the Afghanistan pullout. Like, they literally don't know anything about her.
I think the enthusiasm is just more so a sigh of relief that they finally have a candidate who doesn't have dementia. I think it was really a low bar to create that enthusiasm, and I don't think it's gonna last. Have you have you heard the term Kasich effect?
No, but is that in regards to failed Republican candidate John Kasich?
You have a good memory. It's one of the terms that the guy I like to watch, Sticks, came up with, and he's been using that term for years at this point. It was about Kasich. Kasich was in the Republican primary for president in 2016, and he said that his polling showed him doing better against Clinton than any of the other candidates. The reason was nobody knew anything about him, so it was just generic Republican against Clinton. So he uses the term Kasich effect to describe a candidate that polls better than they really should be polling because nobody knows about them. It's just generic Democrat against Dave McCormick. Generic Democrat against Trump.
Yeah, but in his case, I think that's a bug. In her case, it's a feature. It's by design.
Yeah,
it's by design.
True. Yeah, because you see the drama about the debate rules. They're trying to get out of the debate now.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. And I think ABC's probably going to cave to her demands, because why wouldn't they? Why? I mean, so yeah, we were just talking about this earlier. In the Discord channel, the politics Discord channel, we were just discussing this. The difference, the fundamental difference between the CNN debate and the ABC debate, which were agreed upon at the same time with the same rule sets. It was supposed to be, both debates against Joe Biden. The difference is the CNN debate. I'm almost certain now. That you can say that the intent of that debate was to destroy Joe Biden so that they could ship him off. If the intent was any different, then the moderators would have been stepping in to save him. But the fact that they sat there quiet and straight-faced the entire time, which they have never done in the history of any presidential debate that I can recall, in my lifetime, the moderators have always played a hand in tipping the scale. And in this case, they tipped the scale by not participating at all. They didn't step in and try to fact check. They didn't confirm or deny anything that Donald Trump was saying. They just let Donald Trump do his attacks, and then they let Joe Biden talk himself into a grave, politically speaking. The purpose of that debate, I'm more certain than ever now, was to get rid of Joe Biden. Donald Trump was supposed to be the winner of that debate so that they could do this, so that they could get him out and put her in. That is not going to be the purpose of the ABC debate. The purpose of the ABC debate is to destroy Donald Trump. They're hoping for a repeat. They're hoping for a repeat of the 2020 the 2020 debate where Donald Trump just kind of like yelled at Joe Biden the whole time. And at the end, I think everybody just kind of felt terrible. Like nobody felt that anyone won that. I think people walked away from both of those debates leading up to that election, just kind of feeling bad about both candidates.
I think the reason for, well, at least I think a big part of the reason for them not butting in as much as they have in the past were, I think it really did get under the moderator's skin before the debate, all the memes about, oh, Trump is going to be debating the moderators and Biden at the same time. I think that, like, stuck a needle in their professionalism pride, at least a little bit. So I think they were trying to, like, show up everyone that was saying that stuff and saying, oh, I can do a good job, watch me.
See, I think it was planned. I think the intent was to destroy Joe Biden so that they could get him out and put her in. I mean, it seems to me it's not just the fact that they didn't jump in. The questions were good too. When have the questions ever been good? They're never good. They were all policy questions, and they had hardballs for Joe too, which they never do. They never do that. So, I mean, I'm going to stick to my theory here. The purpose of that debate was to destroy him. The purpose of this one coming up, September 10th, I mean, if they're able to get those rule changes in, so hot mics, right? What they're hoping for more than anything, what Kamala Harris is hoping for more than anything, is for Donald Trump to interrupt just once so that she can get her secret catchphrase off. It's like her kill move. She says, "I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Excuse me.
I don't
I'm
think that
speaking."
secret catchphrase is a good move at all.
I mean, her fans will cheer for it, and we'll all kind of grimace and hate it. Whether or not it actually has any effect on voters, I don't know, but that's what she's hoping for. Like whether or not that'll sway anybody, I don't know. But what I think that you can expect, this is what I predict. I think that you're going to have Donald Trump getting asked about calling her not black, for example. That's going to be a topic. I can see it now. Donna Brazile is going to say,
I can see that.
Former President Trump, you said Kamala's not actually black. Do you still feel that? Like, it's going to be the stupidest stuff. It's going to be non-issues. They're going to try to hit him over the head about January 6th again. They're going to try to hit him over the head about saying he'll be a dictator on day one. Just nothing on policy. I don't think that she's going to get pressed on any policy at all. And I think that Donald Trump has this tendency to get flustered. And he can, that's when he'll start kind of devolving. And cold mics prevented that in the last debate. It prevented a situation where we would see him, maybe yelling over Biden or trying to talk over him or just shut him down. And it totally worked to his advantage. It totally worked to his advantage to just sit there and let Biden speak. I don't know if she gets her rule changes. Hot mics would be the worst thing that could happen. That would be the worst. I think note cards are a terrible idea too. And then of course she supposedly wants them to sit as well.
Wow.
So she wants them seated at a table. Note cards and hot mics. And I mean, I'm sure they'll give her the questions early too. Why not? I mean, Donna Brazile gave Hillary Clinton the questions early. Why wouldn't they do it again?
Well, back to RFK though. I'll admit I didn't. His dropout speech was the first time I listened to him for an extended time, and it was the first time I really came to see how much he cared about chronic illness as an issue and how much he focuses on that. He talks about corruption at the FDA, talks about the chemicals that are in American foods that the EU has banned. I really like that he talks about that, and I hope that he brings that to the Trump campaign, brings that influence to the Trump admin after Trump is elected. What are your thoughts?
I'll be honest. I'm less passionate about I'm less passionate about the food issue than he is, or than perhaps you might be as well. Um, I think I would be more interested to see Trump put him at the head of like an intelligence agency, CIA, something like that.
That's also on my
Just
list to talk about.
yeah, I mean that would be just such a huge fu to the the concentrated intelligence apparatus. That was an unintentional acronym for CIA. I didn't mean that until afterwards, but
Yeah.
uh,
But I've
I
talked about
so
before
it,
high fructose corn syrup and how the farm subsidies for growing corn have really like trapped the American economy into producing so much corn that we have to use somewhere, and other countries. Not everyone might know this, but other countries use pure cane sugar in their soda. They don't use high fructose corn syrup. America does, and I think it's even less healthy than sugar.
I mean, it probably is. It probably is, but like you said before, what role does the federal government necessarily have in stepping in and dictating, what food is made out of? Um, I don't know that I see a real place for a heavy-handed uh, federal government stepping in to kind of control the healthiness of food. Does that make sense?
Granted, if we just get rid of those farm subsidies on corn, it would solve the corn syrup issue. It would also crash the farming economy, the farming industry for a while, but yeah.
And
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know that crashing the farm industry, is a necessarily a good idea right now.
yeah, but
I think that I think that so let me a couple years ago, everybody in the world was going on about how awful GMOs are, for example. GMOs, all the food is chock full of chemicals. Food's not real. The food, there's no safety standards. It's too cheaply made. That's how you feed a planet of 7 billion plus people, though. I mean, like it or not, I think that if you try to flip the switch and change everything to organically grown tomorrow, or everything, um, you know, uh, high safety standards, high quality ingredients, I think you probably see most of the world starve in a couple years. I don't know that it's viable to come in and make a lot of heavy handed changes to food. So I mean, and that's where I said earlier, like I wouldn't personally vote for RFK, and that's probably one of the reasons is I'm not as passionate about food health as he is. Um, Now, when it comes to like chronic illness and um, vaccinations, for example, I'm a little bit more warm to what he has to say on that. I'm a little bit more warm on what he has to say regarding pharmaceuticals and vaccination. I have a book that I'll actually recommend. Um, you know, whenever you decide to, join the ranks of fatherhood, I'm going to
oh
recommend this
yeah.
book to you.
What's the book?
And the vaccine friendly plan.
Oh, I do have
Um,
this.
yeah, Dr. Paul's safe and effective approach to immunity and health from pregnancy through your child's teen years. And basically, what it does is it does a couple different things. But one of the big things it does is it talks about the childhood vaccination schedule. So basically, from the minute they're born, all
Right.
the things that the doctors are going to come and say,
Right.
you're supposed to take this, you're supposed to take this, you're supposed to take this, and this is the schedule that you're supposed to take it at. And this book kind of picks it apart and explains in some of those cases how not only is it not necessary, so it'll kind of break things down into some different categories. It's not an anti-vaxxer book, by the way. It's not an anti-vaccination book. There are some things in there that are recommended, and there are some things that are deemed not necessary, but not necessarily unsafe. And then there are things that are just deemed unsafe, like there's no reason for them to be part of the vaccination schedule at all. And a little bit of the reasoning is delved into on that. How I'm trying to think what was the one example. The HPV shot, California mandated it for all children, and then the FDA and just decided to make that part of the vaccination schedule for the whole country, based on nothing, just based on California deciding to give it to everybody. And there's no reason, there's no benefit to giving that to
I'm not that familiar with HPV.
It's a cancer. Okay. I guess it's a cancer. I'm not an expert on it either. I mean, I'm not an expert on really anything medical. That's why I bought a book.
Yeah.
By two doctors who kind of break it down for you. It's a good book though. The Vaccine Friendly Plan, and it was recommended to me by someone in our Discord. So, yeah, which is how I came to know it. So yeah, I mean, in those regards, you asked about his stances on food and his stances on chronic illness. I'm warmer to his stances on pharmaceuticals and vaccination. I wouldn't say I'm cold to his stances on the quality of food. I'm lukewarm to it, I guess.
Right. We talked about briefly the JFK files as well, declassifying those assassination records. What are your thoughts on that? Because at the Trump rally where he went on stage, Trump actually did promise to declassify as much as he could on that, and also get a team together to specially investigate all the recent assassination attempts.
It's kind of one of those things. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I kind of suspect that if we ever did get full declassification, that there would still be massive chunks redacted.
True. And yeah, we've been promised how many times now. I remember in 2016, just before the election, people were talking about it. Yeah. It's something to hope for, but yeah.
It's something to hope for. I'm not going to say it's at the top of my priority list. It's if he wants to do it, if he wants to declassify it, great. It should be declassified. It's not something that's, if Trump turned around tomorrow and said I'm not going to do it, I wouldn't change my vote. I'd say, well, that's a little disappointing. But I wouldn't change my vote over it.
I think a lot of these three-letter agencies are redundant. I would be happy to see some of them cut or merged, and I think declassifying those files as much as we can is a tiny stepping stone on the path to that.
Well, I love the idea of Elon Musk as the head of a Department of Government Efficiency to reduce redundancy and inefficiency. Just basically
flashbacks to Henry Ford.
Yeah. And I mean, on the topic of Musk again, just real quick, it's super interesting to me how he was a self-described socialist. He was a liberal. I think he might have been like kind of a warm to Bernie Sanders guy. He didn't like Donald Trump. He thought Donald Trump was an idiot. When Donald Trump announced that he was going to run again after 2020, Musk was one of the vocal voices saying, don't pick him as the candidate. Don't support him. He kind of famously said, don't don't make Donald Trump's only path to survival the presidency. Meaning, don't prosecute him to the point where he needs to run for president in order to continue. So Musk was not a Trump fan.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see the way he's come around. And now, their interview was great. Did you listen to their interview?
I have not. Or wait,
So
did I? It was a few weeks ago.
it was just like a real casual,
Yeah.
like 2 hour, just
think
them
I did,
riffing,
actually.
super unstructured. But it was a good interview. Yeah.
I remember now. Yes, I did. Yep.
So you've got some people in big tech who seem like they're coming around.
Yeah.
You've got Musk, you've got Peter Thiel. I kind of wonder about Mark Zuckerberg, because I don't know if you've kind of heard some of the recent things with Mark Zuckerberg.
Haven't been paying super close attention.
Well, apparently he's working out. He's growing his hair long. He's getting like a tan and growing some facial hair. He described Donald Trump's response to the assassination attempt as, quote, badass. Those were his words. He said he looked
Didn't
badass.
he talk about doing a boxing match at some point? I think it might have been with Elon.
I don't know, did he?
I can Google that right now on screen. Zuckerberg
Talks about doing a boxing match with somebody. I feel like I kind of remember that.
Mark Zuckerberg calls off Elon Musk cage match August 14th. Man. That would have been great to see. Oh, August 14th of last year he called off the cage match.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see that. I still have on my calendar the Tyson-Paul fight. Mike Tyson, Jake Paul.
Yeah. When is that supposed to happen?
Oh, let me look. It's coming up. I think it's like November.
What do you think's going to happen? I think Tyson's going to wreck him.
I think if Tyson wins, it'll be in the first couple rounds, but if Paul wins, it'll be in the last few rounds.
Yeah.
Paul has to outlast him if he wants to win.
And then a little bit more on Mark Zuckerberg. I guess he called Trump after the assassination attempt. I need to look this up and verify this. I guess he called Trump after the assassination attempt and said he wasn't going to endorse any candidate or support any particular candidate in the aftermath of that. And I guess he's just come out and said that he was, in fact, pressured by the Biden-Harris administration to he was pressured to cover up stories on Facebook.
Huh.
So the fact that this is all coming out now, I don't know. I kind of wonder if you have all these big tech Silicon Valley guys kind of coming around to Trump, is Mark Zuckerberg maybe going to end up being one of those? That would be super interesting.
But yeah, back to the topic of government efficiency, I brought up Henry Ford. I have pulled up now one of the books that Ford wrote. It's called Today and Tomorrow. It's like sort of a memoir, but it talks a lot about his company and his career. I will do a book review of this at some point, but I absolutely recommend this book. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, because we're talking about the Silicon Valley stuff, RFK has been talking about... I saw that he did an interview with Tucker. I listened to the first few minutes of that before we started this stream. But he hit on the topic of Section 230, which is something I've been looking at for a while. It's the law that specifies whether a website is a publisher or a platform and governs the rules of what they're allowed to censor, basically. Their liability for user posts on their site, depending on this law.
Right.
I would love to see 230 spelled out more clearly that you have to be either a publisher or a platform. If you're a platform, then you cannot censor political speech. I'd love to see that spelled out more clearly in this law. And I like that RFK is talking about it, and I hope that he influences Trump on that topic.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be one of those areas where I think you've probably followed it more closely than I have.
Okay.
I'm not as familiar with 230.
Yeah. The other thing I mentioned to you, we were chatting just before the stream started, and I mentioned RFK said that in his talk with Tucker said that his internal polling before he dropped out told him 57% of his voters, a little more than half, would have gone to Donald Trump if he dropped out without endorsing. But of course he dropped out and he did endorse Trump. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think that Trump probably knew that before this because, as you may recall, there was that leaked phone call. There was that leaked phone call. What was it? The day before? Was it the first day of the RNC convention, or was it the day before? There was the leaked phone call where Donald Trump had asked RFK to join him. Basically, he was trying to convince him to drop out, and he was speaking in a very Trumpian manner. It was just, come on, join me. It's going to be great. We're going to do great things. And I guess one of RFK's sons leaked that phone call, but I think that Donald Trump knew that he was pulling more from his voters than from Kamala's. So and RFK said himself he didn't want to be a spoiler. He didn't want to be a Ross Perot.
I love that he said in RFK's dropout speech, I love that he said he actually did reach out to Kamala and try to open up the discussion about chronic illness, and she just completely stonewalled him, but Trump was willing to talk about it, and that's why he went with Trump. I love that. It's just so representative of the current political climate. Republicans are willing to talk to anyone about anything, but Democrats, no, if you disagree on the slightest thing, nope, bigot, nope, don't want to hear it. You still
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, Republicans, almost to a fault, have adopted this free marketplace of ideas mantra, which, as you know, I'm not quite as sanguine on as you are. I do think there are some ideas that really don't have any place in civilized society. For example, a lot of the transgender arguments.
Yeah.
I don't even think we should. I don't even think we should entertain the argument. Like, I don't even think it has a place in civil society, and anybody who brings it up should be laughed out of the room. But yeah, you are right. You are right that Republicans have become the entertainers of any discussion. They're willing to entertain any idea. I just hope that it doesn't lead to a watering down of the conservative values too much.
I can see where you come from there.
Which maybe is a decent segue. I don't know if you want to talk. I don't know if you wanted to talk at all about.
It is about that time talking about JD Vance.
Well, I was going to say specifically the bots, or maybe they're not bots. I'm not sure. But
Oh,
the Twitter accounts, they seem to be two camps right now. One of them is I'm a lifelong Republican, but I can't vote for Trump because he's just too mean. I'm voting for Kamala. And the other camp is I'm a lifelong evangelical. They both read almost the same. I'm a lifelong evangelical, and I can't vote for Trump because of his abortion stance.
let me pull it up.
Um, so both of those right now, um, basically, all I see when I open up X, when I open up Twitter, call it what you will, it's just an endless stream of those, an endless, never-ending stream of either I'm a lifelong Republican, but I hate Trump, or I'm a lifelong evangelical.
I've been having fun making satire of those. I think I showed you this first one. I'll play it on screen right now. Where's the volume? Oh, that's right. I muted the website. Unmute tab. The hotels that Trump stayed at one time. I'm a Pennsylvania voter. I voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020, but I just can't vote for him this time. Let me tell you why. My friend's uncle once dated a hotel worker who works at one of the hotels that Trump stayed at one time, and she told him that while Trump was there, he flipped the toilet paper roll. It's basically just, oh, I'm a two-time Trump voter, but I can't vote for him this time because I heard he flips the toilet paper roll the wrong way. Or, I'm a two-time Trump voter, but I heard he's a fan of the New York Mets. I'm a Phillies fan. I can't stand for that. Just making these stupid videos about him.
Be like, I was planning on voting for.
I heard he opens the microwave and leaves 2 seconds on the timer and walks away from it. I can't vote for him.
And I was gonna vote for Trump and Vance, but then I heard that JD Vance ordered a cheesesteak and he tried to order it with Swiss cheese. So I can't do it.
In the works.
Can't do it.
It needs just like a little more creative energy. I'll think of something. But the one in the works I got, the punchline would be, oh, I saw he pierced his ear. I just don't think that's a good look for him. I can't vote for him.
You know, what I thought would be kind of a useful psyop. Like I think it would have some real I think it would have some real potential.
What's that?
It would be to go around to Democrats and explain a bunch of Trump policies, but tell them that they're all Kamala policies and get them agreeing with it and being like, oh yeah, that sounds great. That's good. I'm like, do you agree with Kamala's policy to do this, do this, do this, do this? And then at the end, you just tell them, those are all Trump policies, right?
I actually thought of something similar. I thought of going around to Democrats and talking about, hey, I love that Kamala said she's going to increase the child tax credit, It's one of the policies that she stole from Trump.
So I was thinking about even the policies that she's not stealing.
Yeah.
Which this actually becomes harder to do as she steals more. Because they'll just gaslight you and say, oh, she thought of it first, or he never really said it, just because we live in the era of just like no discernible truth anymore. Because we live at a time where it's so impossible to know anything absolutely. Everybody's just in like a gaslighting competition with each other, so she can reasonably get away with stealing like up to 3 or 4 policies now, and just kind of stamping her name on them, it's just insane. Like I don't think we've ever seen anything like this before.
I think the people who pay attention at least are aware of it. It's not as many as we'd hope for, but we don't need that many to pay attention enough to say, hey, what's going on?
But yeah, anyway, like I said, the psyop would basically just be, I don't know, maybe you would attend like a Democrat event or something, and you just go around and interview people, and it wouldn't have to just be the policies that she's stolen and put her copyright on, but you could just go through like all the Trump policies. So, no new wars in the Middle East or no wars. You you mentioned the child tax credit. Um, some of the things that he did in his first term. Um, what was that one executive order he passed on the right to try like experimental medications that haven't been
Yeah, the
passed
right to
yet?
try.
That was great. That was
It
amazing.
was.
That was a great executive action. You remember he was trying to do um, criminal justice reform.
Less familiar with that.
Trump. He was Trump. Trump did a. He was commuting and pardoning sentences for people.
Oh, I might have heard about this.
Yeah, he was trying to do criminal justice reform. I think it was kind of his attempt to make inroads with the black community, and he had like a bunch of rappers involved. There were like a lot of rappers involved for some reason.
Was
It's
this in his
probably
first term?
Yeah. This was during his first term.
Wow.
This was during his first term. He had a bunch of pretty big name rappers that were gonna kind of come and join him at a summit, and apparently Jay-Z like got on the phone and threatened a lot of them with like commercial ruin if they went. Yeah, Jay-Z, because Jay-Z and Beyonce are like Obama operatives.
Amazing.
They're Obama operatives through and through. Um, yeah, Jay-Z like got on the phone and threatened people basically like if you show up to this, I'll make sure you never work again. I don't know how powerful Jay-Z actually is, but like Meek Mill was going to go. Like there were some big names that were going to attend this summit on criminal justice reform.
Yeah, I don't know how powerful that would have been. You remember Joy Villa?
Not really.
It was like late 2016, early 2017, and she wore like a big Trump dress to some fancy event, and everyone on the Trump side was like, "Oh man, we got a singer on our side." And they were like fawning over her songs. Like this tiny recording artist like got huge overnight, and then admittedly her popularity dwindled a lot after that, and a lot of people started calling her like a grifter, saying she's using the movement just for money, for clout. But yeah, the energy at the time, anyone who did go to that and show up with Trump would have just exploded overnight, even if they're tiny. Jay-Z couldn't have stopped that.
Yeah.
And even, the one rapper that had Ben Shapiro in one of his videos, he got pretty big. Let's see, that was...
So really quick, I want to go back to the topic specifically, all of the people on the right now who are saying I can't vote for Trump because of his seeming shift in abortion. First, there really isn't a shift. You can go back pretty far in Trump's history. He's always
right.
That's always been one of the issues where he's not as heterodox. He's not as in line with the rest of the right wing on that, and that goes back pretty much as far as Trump's been, a vocal person in politics. He has never been a staunch pro-life advocate. There are some things he's done that lead me to believe that he's more pro-life than he likes to let on. Obviously, his selection in Supreme Court justices. Also, he did show up at the March for Life. So those are some things that maybe suggest to me that he's a little bit more pro-life than he likes to let on. But it's not as if it's like a big change. It's not a big change, one. And then number two, and this is something I've responded to some people. I've basically typed this message up 100 different ways at this point, just because whenever you see someone on X or Twitter post this, you have to stop what you're doing, and you have to respond to it because it's just so asinine and it's so ridiculous. The moral distinction has never been more apparent. You have on one hand Donald Trump, whose language is a little shaky on the abortion issue, but ultimately was the one responsible for getting 3 justices on the Supreme Court who delivered the killing blow to Roe v. Wade. I mean, it is single-handedly the biggest thing. It is the biggest victory in our lifetime that the pro-life movement has ever had, by far. And I mean, that's all him. That's all him. He put all 3 of those justices on. Versus Kamala Harris, who, as her time as a state AG in California, was personally responsible for jailing. I don't know if you remember this guy, David Deladon. David Deladon was the guy who secretly recorded the Planned Parenthood conversations where they were talking about selling baby body parts.
Oh, was that Veritas or was that something different?
I don't know if he was affiliated with Veritas or not. This guy was a Planned Parenthood employee. He worked there. He was a doctor, and he recorded the conversations between 2 employees who were talking about selling baby body parts. They were talking about selling aborted fetuses on the black market so that they could buy new cars. Really, really grisly stuff. And Kamala Harris personally oversaw the jailing of this guy. He is fighting a legal battle right now. All of his recordings were taken at gunpoint in a guns drawn raid. They kicked down his door, came in his house, took all the recordings. I mean, that was all her. That was all her. And the Biden-Harris administration.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was 100% her. Yeah, that guy's in jail right now, and she is the one responsible for it. She's behind it. And see, people don't even know this about her. Like, that's how good of a job they've done at covering up almost every single facet about her.
Remember that one?
Which one?
His name was Seth Rich.
Oh yeah.
2016. Yep.
Oh yeah, Seth Rich. And then you had the Catholic father in the state of Pennsylvania, the Biden Department of Justice, guns drawn, morning raid on his house, kicked his door down, with all of his children there in the house, and that was because they had some kind of a confrontation with someone at a protest outside of an abortion clinic years before. And the FBI raided this guy's house. Automatic weapons in front of his children.
That's good.
Biden-Harris administration. You have the elderly woman, the 80-year-old woman who was just jailed for 12 years for protesting an abortion clinic. She'll probably die in jail. You have the handful of people who were protesting in an abortion clinic lobby. They're all going to jail for ridiculous sentences, 10, 12 years. So the point I'm making is, to all these people, these supposed evangelical voters who can't vote Trump because they feel that his stance isn't strong enough, I don't know how the moral distinction could be any more clear. You've got someone who I think deep down Trump wants to make incremental change away from abortion. And he understands that you don't get there. You don't get there with a federal abortion ban law that's never going to pass, or at least not pass in our lifetime. I mean, maybe in 60 years you have a totally different culture. I don't know. Maybe it's like a wake up from like the horrors of a society that commits mass infanticide, and you just have like a mass revival and people wake up and they're like, oh God, what have we done? And then maybe it happens. I don't know, but it's not going to happen in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Maybe we could talk about it in 50 years. I don't know. And I think he gets that. And I think maybe he wants to see us move a little bit away from it incrementally. Like, how do we lessen it? How do we lessen abortion? How do we make fewer abortions happen? How do we work slowly towards like net zero? And I think that's where his mind is at. I think that's where his heart is at. Yeah. Versus the people versus the people who will literally put you in jail for protesting outside a clinic.
Yeah, where I'm at on that, I'm glad that the Fed is out of it. I think it should be a state's issue. And even that, as far as policy goes, I differentiate between what I think individuals should do and what I think the government should do. I think the government should be restricted as much as possible. I don't think the government should necessarily be allowed to have a say in this. But yeah, as far as what's right and wrong for an individual to do, yeah, it's murder. It's a sin. You're preventing. If you wouldn't have taken that action, there would be another life around. And I'll even go as far to say I'm iffy on the rape and incest exceptions. If someone has a child of incest, I don't see a reason why that child should die. If someone was raped and gets pregnant, it's a horrible experience. I sympathize, but I don't see how that's that child's fault.
No, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that the only exception can maybe be life of mother.
Yeah, I agree
That's
there too.
probably about as far as I'm willing to go with it. I'll just disagree with you. So the philosophical case. So you have the realist. You have the realist case for a federal abortion ban, and then like the philosophical case. The realist case would look something to the effect of the text in the 14th Amendment. I have it up. I'll just read it to you. So no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. A lot of people stop you there and they're like, well, they're not citizens. Yeah. The second line, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So, the first clause of that says citizen, but the second clause doesn't. It says person. So I think that there's a strong case to be made that the text of the 14th Amendment protects the life of the unborn. I don't think that that's like a wild misinterpretation. I think that there's a case to be made there. It's not a viable case to be made, because if you actually tried to do a federal ban, you would set back the pro-life movement so much, because and I mean, we saw this in a couple states where they tried to do a ban, and they actually ended up resulting in, Kansas was an example. There was another state, there was a southern state that surprisingly enshrined abortion too. Was it Kentucky? I can't recall, but basically the pro-life movement bit off more than they could chew, and the protest vote actually pushed the needle back further. And then the philosophical argument, the philosophical case is, I just don't see how you can share a country. I don't see how you can share a country with people who have different definitions on what it means to be a life. I think that you can disagree with your neighbor over how much taxes you should pay. You can disagree with your neighbor over whether we should build a new power plant, whether we should have this law or that law. I don't see how you share a country and coexist with people who fundamentally believe different things about when it's okay to kill a person or not. Does that make sense?
It has a lot to do with the book review I just did on Death of Ivan Ilyich. You can tell yourself, oh, life starts when you have a heartbeat. Life starts when you have viability, this or that, whatever criteria you want. But on your deathbed, if you're torturing yourself thinking, did I live my life as one should have? Have I lived as I ought to have? And you think back and you come to the conclusion, no. Why? Oh, because if I didn't take this action, whatever I told myself at the time, to justify it, now I'm feeling extreme guilt because I ended a life when, if I didn't go and elect to have that abortion, there would be another life in the world. That's the heart of it, and it has a lot to do with Sermon on the Mount, which it is spelled out explicitly. The point of Sermon on the Mount is spelled out explicitly in Romans 7. We are dead to the law. The new law is love God, love others. Scripture all
Yeah,
ties
but I mean,
together, man.
but the Ten Commandments are still law. Like, the Ten Commandments are never abolished. I mean,
well, it has something to do with Jesus healing on a Sunday. If we need to break a commandment in order to show love to someone, genuine Christ-like love, then that's okay. If we you get what I'm saying.
no, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I mean, what I was saying is, how do you coexist with people? How do you share a democracy with people who fundamentally believe things that are so foreign or alien to what you believe? How do you share a state? How do you share a government or a society with people who believe that infanticide is okay, who believe that putting your children on puberty blockers, dressing them up in the opposite gender's clothing, and calling them by a different name is okay? Like, I can share a country with someone who disagrees with me on tax policy. I can't share a country with someone who disagrees with me on the basic definition of human life or the basic idea of boys and girls. Like, at that point, you can't coexist with that anymore. Does that make sense?
I sort of get it, but I see it as it's still in our control to an extent because we have Scott Pressler's early vote action app right here. We can download that. We can spend time phone calling, door knocking. There are things in our control that we can do to flip votes in this election.
Yeah, well, ultimately, if everything is reverted back to the states, and I mean, I am an advocate for states' rights and reverting things back to the states, and let me say, first and foremost, that abolishing Roe v. Wade and reverting abortion back to the states is a supreme improvement over what it was before. I just don't think it's the end of the path. It's not the place. It's not, the eventual goal, I think, should be to try to reduce it to net zero. And maybe that's not a federal ban that gets you there. Maybe you get there through just outreach and changing hearts and minds. I don't know. I don't think you do. I think that reverting things back to the states, in some ways, I mean, in the short term, it's going to be balkanization. Your blue states will get super blue. Your red states will get super red. People will move to the states that mirror their values most closely. In the long term, yeah, that probably does work out because, you let people play out the blue utopia experience in their state. Well, they're going to fucking ruin their state. It's going to be a trash fire. They're going to destroy their state. And the evidence will be there for all to see. And red states will be prosperous. People are going to want to move there. They're going to want to raise families there. They're going to want to buy homes and build businesses and develop land. And blue states are just going to be, they're just going to be disasters. So I think that in the long term it works out. In the short term, you have mass balkanization.
I think
which
changing
of course
hearts and minds is how we change it. Talking to our friends and neighbors about this is something that we can control. I think we need to be focusing on growing churches and encouraging individual congregations to do outreach in their communities. That's something my church is doing. I don't think government should have a hand in it. And we were talking like an hour ago before the stream started, bringing up that if there was a federal abortion ban, there would be massive backlash against Republicans and against Christians for that.
Yeah, just against pro-life. I mean, against the pro-life movement. Yeah, the backlash would actually set them back further. That's the point. That's the part where a lot of these supposed evangelical accounts, I almost have to wonder if they're fake, because like you can't be that dumb that you don't realize that. It's why I believe probably most of them are bots.
Wouldn't be surprised if they're fake. But yeah,
some of them I know are real. Some of them I know are real, and I'm scratching my head. I'm scratching my head looking at them like, what are you thinking? You can't possibly think that the alternative is better.
I brought up briefly before the stream started when we were chatting that the lustful eunuch, that comes from the Book of Sirach, which is one of the books that Catholics and Orthodox take as scripture, but the Protestants don't. And it gives the example of a eunuch, so they don't have their private parts anymore, but they're still filled with lustful thoughts and desires. And it uses that example to illustrate somebody who is forced to obey the rule of God, somebody who's forced to avoid acting out their sin. If they still have evil thoughts and desires in their heart, then it's still sinful. It's not saved. It's not doing that much good. So the way we do it has to be changing hearts and minds, just changing the law. That's going to create a lot of lustful eunuchs who hate us.
Yeah.
And people might get on me for quoting Apocrypha, but I could give examples from Matthew 4. I could argue something similar. It might be a stretch, but something similar from Genesis 2.
Yeah, I mean, Apocrypha doesn't necessarily mean wrong. It just means not divinely inspired text. I mean, it could still be deemed useful for teaching, learning. You know,
Right,
there's still the words written by early church founders and stuff. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that the term apocrypha means false, and there could be some falsehood in that, but it's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily false.
It is a teaching from
just
a
deemed
religious
not
leader
divinely
of the time.
inspired.
So is Charles Spurgeon, so is Tolstoy, so is C.S. Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I guess while we still have time to...
Vance, you want to get to Vance?
Yes, J.D. Vance, Hillbilly Elegy. So tell me what you thought of the show.
Oh, the film. Yeah, the film.
Oh, is it a film? I thought it was a series.
No, it's a movie. It's just a movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's as far as a movie goes, it's okay. It's an all right movie. The big takeaway that I had from it, and this is a term that I've already used, like I think a couple times in our conversation tonight, is this idea of the moral distinction. So, assuming that this story, this kind of biopic of his life, assuming it's even 1% true, I mean, which I'm assuming more of it than 1% is true. I'm assuming a good deal of it's true. Obviously, there's probably some liberty taken, as there usually is with like a movie that's supposed to be based off of someone's life. But even if just 1% of it were true, the vast moral distinction between someone like this, like J.D. Vance, and Tim Waltz or Kamala Harris it's so profound. It's so astounding. A person who comes from nothing, who grows up in that world. And I mean, it really is the story of rural, undereducated, impoverished white America who really don't get talked about at all. They don't get talked about at all. We conveniently forget all the time that's even a group of people, and that it's a very large, very populous group of people. But to come from that and then to end up where he's ended up is the American dream. It's almost the perfect encapsulation of it. It's such a vast moral distinction from what we're up against. So that was my big takeaway. Um,
I'm glad the film did instill that takeaway. I'm glad that was conveyed in the film because I wasn't sure how thoroughly that would be conveyed. I'm a third of the way through this book. Um, it starts out in the introduction. He defines the group that he's talking about, which is the Scots-Irish ethnic group, the descendants of Scottish and Irish immigrants specifically to the Appalachian region. He identifies that ethnic group. He contrasts it with the Anglo-Saxons of New England, and he doesn't mention the German Protestants of Pennsylvania, but that we also contrast with this ethnic group. And he talks about just the attitudes, the self-defeatism that sort of underlines that community. Like, he gives examples. They have opportunities to uplift themselves, but in many cases they don't take it. When they have a good job, they slack off, they're lazy, they come to work late, they take long bathroom breaks, they get fired. And he even goes as far as giving examples and statistics on a condition known as Mountain Dew mouth, which is just a certain kind of teeth rot that comes from drinking too much high fructose corn sludge.
yeah.
And
I mean, I could tell you the movie doesn't go into any of that.
that's just the introduction. He does a great job of following his grandparents' life story all the way down to his own life story, and all throughout the book he gives examples. He quotes statistics. Oh, here's how many people moved from Kentucky to Ohio during this time. But the statistics aren't the main focus. The main focus is, oh, my grandfather moved from Kentucky to Ohio during this time. This company built this small town in Ohio by offering such and such family deal for the families of the workers there. Some kind of benefit, I forget the details. But yeah, talks about what life was like in Middletown, Ohio, and how the family still had connections in Kentucky. And going through it, eventually it goes down to his mom, talks about how she got divorced, married an alcoholic, divorced him to the alcoholic stepdad, and I'm at the point where the mom got arrested for domestic violence, and I forget the details, but it worked out. Hillbilly justice is what he calls it, worked out better than the actual justice system, which is the grandmother saying, no, I'm raising this kid now. He can stay with me as often as he wants. He can stay with you as often as he wants, because they lived down the street from each other at the time. But if you try to stop him from coming to my house, you get to talk to my shotgun, the mother telling the daughter, which is J.D. Vance's mother, this.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's all pretty accurate to the movie. Yeah. His mother is an absolute train wreck. Who just can't seem to get her life together. Just continual bad decisions. Always saying, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to change. Never does. The grandmother is imperfect, but kind of a rock that holds everything together. And I guess maybe there's kind of a theme there of wisdom. Wisdom and solidity come with age.
The book also went into the grandfather way back when suffered pretty bad alcoholism, but he quit cold turkey. He pulled himself together.
Yeah. The movie kind of touches on it a little bit. But yeah, it sounds like the book just goes into a lot more detail. Did you get a real sense of just kind of the boomer mantra of you just have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, though? Did you kind of get that at all from it?
Yes, and I guess calling it the boomer mantra, I think...
Now, Vance has kind of changed. He's kind of changed a bit from this. I mean, if you go back to his, his rhetoric has become more populist. His stances have become more populist. And if you go back to his speech at the RNC convention, it sounded more like a left wing speech, honestly. And I don't necessarily disagree with his speech, but it's not the same. It's not the same tone that he's using in something like Hillbilly Elegy. There's definitely more of a tone of no, the systems can be set against you, and there can be things where you just can't seem to get yourself out of the hole, and it's not necessarily your fault. Whereas, in Hillbilly Elegy, it seems to be a real sense of if you look down at these people who kind of live in the gutters,
That's interesting.
there's something that they're doing to themselves to keep themselves there. And he's definitely, as he's shifted more populist, I think he's moved away from that a bit. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I don't necessarily. I guess if you had to press me to it, I probably agree a little bit more with his populist stances at this point. That if you're born into it and you grow up around it, and there are no opportunities and there are no jobs, can we really expect pull yourself up by your bootstraps to honestly be a catch-all answer for everything? And no, I don't think we can. What do you think?
I think even if the system is stacked against you, it certainly couldn't hurt to have the attitude of personal responsibility. I in the Gambler book review I just did, they call it the German way of earning wealth as opposed to gambling being the Russian way of earning wealth. But the Germans have, the book describes, the Germans have the idea of honest work throughout 3 generations, and by the time it gets to the grandson, there's just this massive fortune in savings that's saved up. And I compared that to Ben Franklin's essay, The Way to Wealth, that he wrote as Poor Richard's Almanac. And this all ties together nicely with Hillbilly Elegy, the idea of just doing what you can, be frugal, work hard, save what you can, and over time, even if you're taxed as much as the British were taxing the colonies, even if you're in that kind of situation, your situation in life will improve if you have that drive, that inner motivation to work hard and save.
So to that, I'll say saving is the best advice ever until you find yourself in an out of control inflationary death spiral like we're in right now, where inflation is it's a tax on savings. That's what it is. It's where the dollars in your bank become less valuable the more of them you have and the longer you hold them. You're actually better off just buying shit because the stuff that you own will become more valuable than the dollars that you have.
Well, yeah,
so,
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Even with inflation, there's ways around it. People talk about buying gold and silver. You can invest in real estate. I have my own investments that are separate from those two things.
Yeah,
There's
but
ways
at this point, like real estate is so far off from most people, and that's what I think Vance is talking about. More populist Vance, like RNC convention speech Vance. Like the dream of owning a house is now so out of reach for most people. It's become, and it's so demoralizing to see just a generation ago how easily attainable it was. How a part-time job bought you your house versus now how, I mean, you're lucky if you can even find a rent that you can afford at this point, depending where you live. And I mean, maybe it means you need to pick up and move. I don't know. I think that's an interesting philosophical argument too. Should you do you kind of have a right to your roots, or does the American dream require that you be willing to pick up and move if that's what it requires? Like, should you just be willing to let the small town die, or do people have to be willing to be mobile?
It
And
would
that's
take a
you know
whole lot to get me to move out of the area I grew up in.
so Tucker Carlson, for example, he argues that you shouldn't have to leave your small town.
Yeah.
The opportunity should exist there. Which that's a very populist argument. He would argue that it shouldn't be a requirement that you pick up and move your life to wherever the opportunities are. That instead society needs to be restructured so that the opportunities exist near you in your small town. And I mean, I guess I kind of agree with that. I think that you know you can't have everybody constantly trying to migrate to the next California gold rush.
The housing issue is a big one to tackle, and I would say that's one where the leftists aren't even completely wrong, they just don't have the full picture. And it's something I discuss with my lefty friends sorta often.
Well,
I
their solution's rent control, which leads to housing shortages.
there's a lot of facets to it. They also identify basically greedy landlords, people buying up and making too many Airbnb homes, and it's taking out of the housing supply. I identify too many migrants taking up too much housing demand.
Yeah, yeah. So
There's
so
also inflation. There's also the cost of building materials has not gone down since COVID. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of
yeah,
different
yeah. So
angles we
so
could look at.
the solution to solving the housing cost crisis, I think there's a couple easily actionable things you can do that would get you kind of going on the right path. And number one is you have to build more housing. You just have to build more supply. There has to be more housing. Um, Number two is, yeah, you have to stop the immigration. You have to stop people coming in. And then number three, um, I don't think that you can tell, like landlords, for example, you can't buy more properties. Um, but you could definitely stop foreign investors. Like there's no reason for the Chinese to be buying up housing. They are. I don't know why they are, but they are. I'm not sure what they're up to. But foreign companies are buying up housing in the U.S. That's an easy fix. Yeah, you just ban it. Yeah, you can't own property. Why do the Chinese need to be buying property in the United States?
I think we should be a little more hesitant to build new housing because I've seen it in my local area just destroying natural beauty to build these cookie cutter suburbs. I I don't like it. I don't like it. And even of course there's also local issues with sewage, and I've had my own fights with the township because they're destroying, like, there's a stream that goes downstream from a construction site through my property. They're destroying that, honestly. Just and that's just poor planning, not planning out for the water runoff, for the sediment
Yeah,
runoff. But that's
yeah,
that's more a local issue, but I can't in good conscience say that just building more houses is the solution, because there's also people that just don't want more neighbors. I'm one of them. I go bananas in the morning, too many slow people on my back road that was never meant to have this many cars on it. Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
it's an
get I
ugly
get
issue.
that, but I mean, you have to increase supply in order to lower costs. It's um
I would rather get the
how
illegals
do you
out first and stop immigration. I would rather reduce demand than increase supply.
I don't know how many illegal immigrants do you think are buying houses though?
True, not buying houses, but they are buying up. They are taking up rent space that at the very least someone else could be renting that apartment.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean, I think that
even in the cities, in New York City, they're building too many residential multi-story apartment buildings. There's not enough the infrastructure isn't there to support that many drivers, that many cars, or even that many public transit passengers.
worse. There people are actually leaving. People are leaving New York and they're coming to places like Pennsylvania.
That too.
Pennsylvania is like unrecognizable from what it was, a decade ago.
Yeah.
It is so much more built up. It is so much busier, and it's a lot of people seeking refuge from their states like New York, New Jersey, the whole New England region.
It's sad to see.
They, yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe it's building more housing in the right areas. You need places where people don't want to live. Make them into places where people do want to live. Develop those places.
Of course, it is always easy to say just build a house somewhere else, build it, all the way out in the Midwest in the plains. But then again, I see people on social media out there saying, "What? I moved out here because I don't want neighbors, and now there's a whole new suburb just down the street from me." Absolute disappointment from that. I couldn't even imagine that amount of disappointment. It's a tough issue.
Yeah, it is, man. I think you have to increase supply though. You have to build. You have to develop. I think that I think having lots of neighbors is a good thing. I think that that's actually probably one of America's the idea of isolation and rugged individualism. I think is probably one of the big problems that's led to us being so isolated and having such a communal breakdown. Is that people don't live in neighborhoods. They don't have neighbors. I think that having lots of neighbors who is kind of how you get on track to rebuild a high trust society again.
Yeah,
You
once
don't have
again,
have
go to your church, grow your local church, encourage your church to do outreach.
Yeah, I mean that's one step. That's one step is you need church attendance. You need church attendance to go back up. Um, but additionally, just having people around who you know and who you see on the daily, who having somebody who you can trust to watch your kids for you, mow your lawn for you, water your plants,
Yeah.
watch your dog. That doesn't exist anymore. People are super isolated. Um, even people who live in high population areas, people who live in major cities packed like sardines in cans are isolated. There's no community. There's a book that I've been meaning to read that discusses this, and unfortunately, I just can't find an audiobook for it. I don't know. Maybe you can help me out with that.
What book is this?
The Quest for Community by Robert A. Nisbet.
I'll look into that.
A Study in the Ethics of Order and Freedom.
Okay. I have a tab open. I'll keep it on my mind.
Yeah, this has been on my to-read list for a long time, but it kind of, to my understanding, just discusses a little bit of what I'm attempting to articulate and failing.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, so what else? What else we got?
Is there anything we didn't talk about with Hillbilly Elegy?
I mean, I don't want to, since you're still reading it, I don't want to spoil.
Okay.
I don't want to necessarily
Yeah.
spoil anything. Just I mean, as far as the movie goes, it's not bad. It's okay. It's all right. I would recommend it just to anybody who wants to get a feel for the character of JD Vance, because it is supposed to be about him. And as I mentioned before, assuming even just a little bit of it's true, just a vast difference between him and what we're opposed to right now, the people on the other side, the opposition.
I agree.
Just a stark contrast.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much everything on my list of stuff to talk about.
Oh man, you're more prepared than me. I didn't even have a list.
I just scribbled some stuff down, half of it while we were talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
All right. Well, what do you think? You think we'll wrap it up then?
I think so, yeah. It's about that time.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too.